Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good morning Vietnam, and welcome to the madness that is the Charlie Marx Show. I'm Charlie Marx, and this week, due to unforeseen circumstances, I shall be standing in for Charlie Marx. If neither myself nor the original Charlie Marx are back to do the show next time, then Charlie Marx will be standing in for both of us. If you're enjoying the Charlie Marx Show, then please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and follow the Charlie Marx Show. Also, please share, as sharing is daring. You can also leave me a comment, or why not join the show by sharing a problem with viewers' letters, or tell me what's bugging you in the world with the Devil's Advocate. I can also be spied upon by you visiting www.charliemarx.co.uk. If you're not enjoying the Charlie Marx Show, then please let me know what I've done to displease you so much, and watch anyway. Now, with Christmas fast approaching, seeing as it's November, I think it's vitally important to relay this essential message to people not as fortunate as ourselves. I want lots of presents. Coming up on tonight's show, we have viewers' letter, plus all the latest fake news from around the world and beyond from the CM Newsroom, plus our special guest, plus Storytime with Sir Percival Homosexual reading the yet-to-be classic Orville Century, and of course moans and groans and things that go irk in the night with the Devil's Advocate. Before we move on with the show, I'd like to send a quick get well soon to one of our subscribers, Ian McCormick, who is in hospital right now. An important message to the wonderful nurses looking after him. He was looking at your name badge, not your boobies. And now, before all the insanity which is the Charlie Marx Show, a quick word from our sponsor. Tired of continually being harassed by people collecting for charity? Sick of hearing the rattle of charity tins approach whilst you're having coffee? Fed up hearing about people less fortunate than yourself? Then you need the Book of Avoiding Charity Excuses by the Winkle Wonkle Company. This 3-page time-saving book can be yours for only $9.99, and we can guarantee that you will never have to fret about these embarrassing moments ever again. The Avoiding Charity Excuses book will teach you time-saving responses that will stop you having to divert your journey ever again. If someone asks to talk about the plight of the Romanian midgets with allergies, then your excuse is, "No, I'm above all that." If someone asks you if you can spare 5 minutes so they can tell you about the harrowing incidents taking place in Coronation Street, then your response is, "No, I refuse to talk to anyone who misgenders me." For only $9.99 you will never have to rush into a shop you had no intention of visiting. Should someone ask you, "Can you spare some change for the Mel Gibson Synagogue Foundation?" you can say, "No, I don't give money to any charity that is a charity." When they ask, "Let me tell you about the 1970s Celebrity Beast charity," you can say, "No, I've already given to the 1980s Straight Pop Stars Who Came Out Foundation." All these excuses and more can be yours for the low price of $9.99. And when you buy the Book of Avoiding Charity Excuses only from the Winkle Wonkle Foundation, that if you order 234 books or more, you will get this fabulous Boris Johnson at the Wurlitzer organ, absolutely free. Thank you to our sponsor. I was reading the newspaper earlier because I think it's important to stay up to date with the crossword. And I happened to notice that this newspaper and most media outlets have one thing in common: priorities. Pages further on in the newspaper told stories of Palestine March violence at football game, the continuing Ukraine war, Trump becoming president of his own little world, a nurse tragically dies, a stormy planet revealed, and floods in Spain. However, on page 2, long before these world-shaking events, was news about a chunky TV presenter of a baking show who falls off a countertop she should not have been sitting on and lands flat in her face. What a topsy-turvy world we live in. Now, let's see if we can help one of our viewers with a problem only the Charlie Marx Show can solve in Viewer's Letter. Today's viewer's letter comes all the way from America, from a Mr. Stevie Wonder. It reads, Dear Charlie, is it wrong that I don't like black people? Cheers, Stevie. Well, Mr. Stevie Wonder, yes. Yes, it is, because it's racist. Tune in next time for another viewer's letter.
I have to admit, I didn't think much of Charlie Marx when I first met him. Looked like a stiff breeze could blow him over. That was my first impression of the man. I could see how some people took him for an idiot. He had a quiet, loud way about him. A walk and a talk that just wasn't normal on YouTube. He strolled like a man in the park, just about to pick up after his dog. Yeah, I think it would be fair to say that I like Charlie Marx Show from the start. And you should like, subscribe, follow, and even share, because you never know when that doggy is gonna do a doo-doo.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners alike. You're watching The Charlie Marx Show, where reality becomes like an episode from The X-Files without the budget. Coming up, our special guest, Storytime and the Devil's Advocate. But before all that, it's time to get a roundup of the latest fake news from around the world and beyond with CM News.
Good evening, and welcome to CM News with me, Greta Thunberg. We'll begin with some breaking news. Last night, my wife broke my favourite mug. In other news, a 94-year-old woman has sadly died earlier today. Gertrude Halfpenny had only the previous day applied for life insurance when the free pen she received for signing up exploded. A spokeswoman for the Sunny Bunny Chunky Monkey Insurance Company said, sadly, this particular accident wasn't covered. The BBG are to launch a new television show where a couple from their war-torn country in the Middle East try to locate to a place in Northamptonshire. It is to be called Escape from the Country. It's going to be a yellow weather warning for some parts of the country as Storm Peekaboo draws nearer. Weather people have no idea which areas will be affected by Storm Peekaboo. And finally, Sylvester Stallone has won his first BAFTA for his marvelous portrayal of a lawyer forced to return to Vietnam to find his lost briefcase in Rambo of the Bailey. And that was the latest headlines. This is Greta Thunberg for CM News. Good night.
Thank you, Greta. And if I don't want to recycle, I won't. More from the CM Newsroom next time. But now, my special guest. My guest this evening is a renowned astronomer, Dr. Herbert Dr. Fanungagu. Welcome to the show, Dr. Herbert.
It is your pleasure.
Indeed. If I may start by saying that your astrological views are quite controversial.
You may.
Thank you. Your astronomical views are quite controversial.
They are indeed, but I feel that it's important to stress that although my doctorate was obtained from eBay, I am still the best astronomer in the world, according to my mother.
So, would you say that you are the top astronomer in your field?
I don't have a field, I have a garden.
Then you are the top astronomer in your garden?
As long as I am in my garden alone, then yes, most certainly.
I mentioned that your views were controversial due to you believing that our universe revolves around us and that there is only a singular universe, and outside of it is only a hairdressing salon and a Burger King. Where is the evidence for this belief?
I do not need evidence because I have a note from my grandmother. And anyway, we have sent a mission craft into space, but it's so dark out there we can't see a thing.
And what are your opinions on the sun?
Well, he's doing all right in school, but lacks confidence.
I was referring to the sun in the sky.
Oh, that sun. I believe that the sun is merely a very large torch used by a giant entity who is looking for his charger. And the reason it goes away is because it runs out of the batteries.
Interesting. Your initial studies were on Pluto, but your papers were never published. Why?
Well, they said I spent too much time discussing Mickey and Goofy and neglected my initial topic.
And you also studied Uranus. What were your findings?
Sweet corn.
Do you think that there is intelligent life on other planets?
Going by these questions, I don't even believe there is intelligent life on this planet. I'm not ruling out that there are no other species out there. And one has to hope that if there are, they're hopefully all single females, as my mother wants me to move out and get a girlfriend.
And how do you think the world will end?
Ah, the ultimate question. I believe that gravity will pull the Tesla car out of space back to this planet, and that will cause our demise and complete destruction.
But surely the car will burn up on entry and almost disintegrate?
Ah, yes, but you are forgetting the can of Coke that is in a glove compartment. You see, that can will fall out of the car as it enters Earth's orbit and hit Putin on the head, which will make him very angry and cause him to go to war with Yugoslavia, and thus destroys the only country that is difficult to spell, which in turn will have spelling competitions cancelled, and thus the start of World War III.
But this will not be within our lifetime.
No, although I'm pretty sure it will be on a Tuesday afternoon.
Well, we've run out of time here, but I want to thank you for your professional insight and your in-depth analysis on outer space. Dr. Hunoff, Dr. Herbert, ladies and gentlemen. Join me next week when our guest of the show will be none other than a guest for the show. But now, it's time to slip into your pyjamas, get your cosy blanket, throw another weasel in the fire, and curl up on the sofa with a nice glass of wine as Sir Percival Homosexual reads this week's soon-to-be classic, Orville's Century, in Storytime.
Hello children, and welcome to Storytime. Tonight's story is a classic tale from a land far, 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 miles away, in a place called Scotland, titled Orville's Century. Are you sitting comfortably with your can of cheap beer and your vape? Then we'll begin. Orville was a man just 3 days away from his 100th birthday. He was so excited he had almost forgotten to take his heart tablets. However, the amazing thing about Orville was that he had smoked since he was the age of 4 and not lived the usual life that would have brought him to being 3 days away from turning 100. He was born in 1907 when life expectancy was so much less than it is now. This being said, and I have indeed just said it, his parents had lived to the ripe old age of 16, and Orville always knew that longevity was in his genes. Sadly, his longevity was lost when his mother washed his genes, but by the time he was 10, he knew his only desire in life was to live to see his 100th birthday. Orville's life had been a mixture of pain and pleasure, receiving both experiences at the same brothel. It was at this particular brothel that he met the love of his life, Trudy, who specialised in brothely things and stealing wallets from her clients. Sadly, Trudy was killed when she tried to steal from a gentleman who kept his pet cobra in his pocket, as this was the fashion back in the day. Orville mourned for Trudy for 6 hours, then met another woman who worked in the same brothel, making broth. They were married for 47 years until she died of boredom, and his only regret was that he never ever asked her name. The single life seemed to suit Orville, who carried on through life by working as a hitman for disgruntled pensioners and playing bowls. At one time he even managed to become the county's bowls champion, but lost his title, and although he searched he could never find it. In 1973 Orville wrote the greatest novel ever, but his house caught fire and destroyed the manuscript, which was a shame as he only had one more sentence to write. Not to be discouraged, Orville then invented a machine from old cigarette butts which would allow you to type a manuscript onto it and save it on the system. But with only 1 day left to perfect the machine, his house was burgled and the idea was stolen. Many a weaker man would have given up on life, but Orville found the inner strength and created a time machine, and by 1984 it was almost complete. Sadly, he could not decide which colour to paint it, so he abandoned the project. As the 1980s drifted on, Orville wrote a song for an Australian girl titled I Should Be So Fortunate, but she declined the offer. By 1991, Orville began to get excited about his 100th birthday, but seeing as most of his friends and family had been killed by stupidity, he wondered who he could invite to his birthday party. He wrote out a list of nice people he'd admired through the years, like Einstein, Churchill, Vivaldi, Stephen Hawking, Gandhi, Socrates, and Mr. Smith, the Christian who came to his door every day preaching the good news of the Lord. But would Mr. Smith accept the invite? After all, the event was happening in the winter time, and what with Mr. Smith's arthritis and his short temper, it was 50-50. Orville circled Mr. Smith's name even if he was a cold and frosty Mormon. The local betting shops and underground gambling dens had decided to run a book on whether or not Orville would make it to 100, with the odds diminishing with every rumour about his health. When Orville turned 98, he pondered on all the things he had not yet done with his life. He'd always wanted to learn to play chopsticks on the piano at the Royal Albert Hall, and he had a great idea for a dramatic film script of the little-known life of the biblical potato chip, calling it The Passion of the Crisp. He'd also wanted to open a shop that sold smartwatches to stupid people, and he desired to own a brand new second pair of tartan slippers. Time trundled on, and it was finally the night before his 100th birthday. All he had to do now was survive a few more hours and he would reach his ultimate goal. So he decided to take to his bed early so he could get to sleep a 99-year-old and wake up a centurion. The thoughts raced through his head like a tortoise, and he tossed and turned thinking about all the time he'd wasted. So many years wasted on going to the bathroom. So many wasted hours sleeping. So many wasted hours watching his neighbours put the wrong items into their recycle bin. Suddenly his eyes shot open. "By jingo," he exclaimed, "I do believe I have just thought of a cure for cancer." He now had the purpose for living to the age of 101, and excitement filled his mind. He thought about getting out of bed and writing down the cure, but he just got comfortable and decided that he would write it down the next day. Orville closed his eyes, but it was no use. He would have to write it down, and just in case he either forgot it or that God would take him as soon as he became 100. He pressed the button on his electric bed to raise him up, but the cramp in his fingers clenched and the bed folded. He became resigned to the knowledge that he was about to be folded like a calzone. "Oh, brother," he thought as the bed closed tight, folding him in half. He awoke to find himself walking in the garden of heaven next to a tall, portly man in a white robe with a long white beard. "Are you God?" asked Orville. The old man smiled at him. "I am the he that one would be referring to." "Why did you make me die when I was just about to turn 100 and that I had found a cure for cancer?" asked Orville. God looked at him and said, "I had £10 on you not making it." Together they walked further into the garden, discussing the advantages and disadvantages of tartan slippers.
And so Percival will be back next time with another exciting tale in Storytime. But now it's time for another roundup of moans and groans in The Devil's Advocate. Welcome, boys and girls, to The Devil's Advocate. Tonight's moan is titled The Changing of the Guardian. I feel, like many millions out there, that the world has gone to hell. Nothing is as it should be, and every day it's getting worse. The problem is, nobody has a solution to the wrongs that have been done on this planet. Until now. I've thought about this problem we face for a while, then realised that most of the issues resulting in our future demise have one thing in common: man. That's right. From a simple species that evolved from a bit of slime in the water into something that has decided to be so superior to everything else on this planet. Presidents, dictators, prime ministers, kings, rulers and fanatics have all but destroyed us. And should it be surprising that the common denominator is man? Yes, my friends, man is the problem. And the solution is relatively simple. Women need to be in charge of the world. Think about it. Just take a minute to think about how different, how much better our lives would be if women ruled the world. Now, I can hear all the males out there screaming at the screen as I say this, but please, bear with me and I shall explain fully. Firstly, women don't go to war. They argue, but there is just too much to be getting on with to go to war. Also, a woman would never spend the kind of money men spend in war. They would wait until the sales were on, and by that time the anger would have subsided, and the two leaders of the warring countries would be drinking Prosecco and talking about their boyfriends. There would never be famine in the world because there are too many women who are mothers, and they always make sure there is enough food being cooked to feed the world. The rich would have to pay more taxes than the poor because women tend to root for the underdog more than men do, except, of course, when it comes to Rocky movies. There would be no more pollution in the air, as women would have by now come up with a powerful enough vacuum cleaner to suck all the pollutants out of the air. The countryside would not have been disseminated as much as it has, because if women were in charge, all houses would be smaller, so there would be less clutter to clean on a Saturday. Women also enjoy taking their children to the park where they can meet like-minded women and look at men's bottoms secretly. The polar caps would not be melting as women would ship over all their old refrigerators and leave the doors open. Diseases would be a thing of the past as women were always left to look after their sick children and their men who are dying from the sniffles. So they'd be desperate to come up with something. The prisons would not be overpopulated as people who commit crimes would all be sentenced to death. Women cannot forgive. Violence would not be tolerated as women would not encourage the ripping of expensive clothing. Hunting would be banned as women cannot abide cruelty towards dumb animals, which also keeps men safe. There would be no greed in the world as women would not allow someone to have more of anything than they would have. Corruption would be a thing of the past as women are too honest, and the overpopulation problem would end like that because women would make men have to give birth and no man would want the pain. STDs would become a thing only read about in history books as due to men having to give birth there would be a surge in male virgins. So there you have it, folks, another wrong put right in the Devil's Advocate. Thank you for watching the Charlie Marx Show, and remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, share and follow. And you can also follow me on www.charliemarx.co.uk. So, until next time, wait until next time.